Welcome to the Happy Mindset, episode 146. Today's episode is called Pomme. Today's episode is about embracing your weirdness as a person. How this actually helps you as a creative person. Somebody who wants to write, somebody wants to maybe make music or do your own thing in life. What I found is that quote, it's that Joseph Campbell quote, that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. I've had that in my mind for quite a while because at some point I realized that I do need to face the cave. I need to face the things that I've been ashamed, embarrassed about, that I've suppressed to myself. So that's what I'm talking about in this episode today. I'm going to talk about Pomme. This name comes from, she's one of my favorite singers I'm listening to at the moment. She's French. Singer-songwriter Claire Pomme is her name. I'll put a link in the show notes to one of my favorite songs from her. Isn't actually a French song, it's a Japanese song called Itsumo Nando Demo, which is interesting. I'll just talk around two things that I reconnected with as an adult that I was quite ashamed about as a child and I was quite just confused about as a teenager. So, and actually the link is there. It's between Pomme and Itsumo Nando Demo. So Itsumo Nando Demo is a song she sang from her favorite film, which is a Japanese anime film called Spirited Away. I think it's on Netflix if you want to check it out. It won an Academy Award. So that connected with me because when I was younger, as a child growing up, I think it was like a preteen, I loved Pokemon. And the reason I loved Pokemon, looking back on it, was the feeling it gave me. It connected with a feeling of wonder and adventure and excitement. And that was in stark contrast to my real life. I felt the real life, looking back on it, I felt like the real life was just banal and there were so many limitations and people telling you who you are and how to think and how to feel. Especially the boy growing up in a culture where emotions weren't understood, where things like boys don't cry, all that kind of thing was in the culture. So you couldn't really feel those feelings in a healthy way and express them. So what I found when I grew up in that culture, I had to suppress them. You either lash out or you suppress them. I think even lashing out is a form of suppression anyway. So suppression is the only way to deal with an emotion if you don't know how to deal with it properly. So that was for me interesting that Itsumo Nando Demo, she sang that song. It was a Japanese anime film. And I'm in research mode at the moment when I'm writing my book about creativity. This is how I kind of came across this. This is just by chance, by synchronicities. The reason that it sticks out to me is because I immediately link it back to some periods in my life where I might have felt shame. The reason Pokemon and Japanese anime was in my mind was because I can remember when I was in France, when I had my mental breakdown. Pokemon was being watched by a lot of the adults in the school there, and I felt really weird about that because I was remembering my experiences where I felt shame for watching that and be interested in that. And yet these people seem to be okay with that; they're comfortable with that. It's not an issue. So that was something that I felt like I was going to explore at some stage in time again. And just this then, it's like a synchronicity. I'm like, geez, I didn't even think she was going to be singing a Japanese song. I didn't know that was going to be her favorite movie, and I made myself watch that as well, Spirited Away. I felt uncomfortable about that because it connected to that time where I felt embarrassed for watching, I think, a Japanese anime. So I watched it, felt the discomfort, watched it, and I realized as an adult, some of those movies, there's some great lessons in them. As an adult, when you look at it metaphorically, there's some great life lessons in those anime films. So that was in childhood, that was the main thing, and that was again tied to creativity, art, exploration, adventure, those types of feelings. You need to have a sense of wonder and adventure to express art. That's the way I feel about things anyway. So that was my first opportunity as a child. I felt embarrassed about that and I let that go. Then French came into my life around the age of 13, 14. I never fully knew why it came into my life. I could never pinpoint why am I drawn to learning this language other than seeing it as a challenge and something that was going to open up a new world to me. Other than that, I didn't really know why it came into my life. Looking back, I can see that it was creativity and art coming back into my life in the form of French, this language, this foreign language that I had to use creativity to understand. Didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that all throughout the process of doing it, that it was creativity that was coming back into my life there. The other aspect of that was, in my mind, And still to this day, I perceive the French language as quite feminine. Feminine energy, not just female, as in feminine energy. I feel like we've all got masculine and feminine within us. They're energies. So the French language for me represented that feminine energy, which would be that sensitivity that you need as a creative person, as an artist, that I was blocked off from because of the culture I grew up in, where boys don't feel emotion, they don't express emotion. Because when you don't understand emotion, you tend to think of it in black and white. So I could never understand that a man can be both strong and sensitive at the same time. I always thought there were two different characters. Either you have the strong, muscular man who is very stoic and doesn't show any emotion, or you got this kind of weakling, sensitive, always crying, too sensitive, can't say anything to them type of person. But through experience, I've realized that that is not the case at all. There are two different forms of energy that you integrate in yourself. So over time, of course, there's no quick fix answer here. It's very nuanced and very subtle, and you follow your own path in life. But there's no getting around emotions. If you suppress them, they're going to spill out somewhere anyway. They'll spill out when you're unconscious to them. So you won't even see yourself doing it because you're completely unconscious to when you're expressing these emotions. So the healthiest thing I found in my life to do is to own that again and express that intentionally. And it gives me a reason to work through problems in my life. I need some sort of reason to tackle these problems because sometimes you're challenged with very, very confronting stuff in life and problems. So there needs to be a strong reason to work through all that stuff. Otherwise, you can easily just kind of go unconscious on it and pretend it's not there, sweep it under the carpet, even though it's plainly there when you're either by yourself or even around people who know you well enough that this is a problem you're having. So what I found, it's very uncomfortable looking at these parts of yourself that you've repressed. Sometimes it's been what I found as a child. It just felt it was more the external world that was making me feel a bit embarrassed about liking Japanese anime because I was an Irish guy growing up in the 1990s. I felt weird. I felt that pressure from the external to give it up. And the way I kind of look at these things as well is that you have to lose yourself to find yourself again. So I have no resentment around this. From my understanding, that's the way life is. As you go through the childhood phases, as you're learning developmentally and other people are teaching you, you can lose that connection with who you are because you're not developed enough, mature. Well, you haven't got enough maturity to know that yet. And even as an adult, it takes a long time to even try and figure out who you are and reconnect with it. And I feel we live in a world of contrasts. So sometimes you go through the contrast to understand what the opposite side of it is. So for somebody who was very low in emotional intelligence, who couldn't feel at all, didn't have any comprehension of feeling, then when you do start to gain that emotional intelligence, you'll see the contrast better because you'll be like, Jesus, I would have never been able to approach that problem or that person before in a grounded way. The other thing with the sensitivity, counterintuitive. The more you get comfortable with your emotions, the more grounded you become and centered. That's from my understanding, looking at a man, that's what a strong man looks like to me. Somebody who's grounded in themselves. They know who they are. And I don't think you can get to that without emotional intelligence. Because you can have somebody who pretends to be a strong guy. I think that's where it'll be more the controlling dictator who's trying to control the outside, and they think that that's the understanding of being a strong man because they're so fixated on control and power over other people, rather than the man who looks at power from the internal. That power comes from a sense of who you are, and you're sharing what you know, sharing your knowledge, sharing the stuff you've gone through, what you've overcome with other people. That for me is the strong man there, and that strong man who knows that the power is within has to go through all the internal world, all the internal emotions, all the conflicts, all the psychological conflicts, unravel, make sense of all that. Take somebody who's got courage and bravery to do that because you're accepting that there is fear there. Courage, and you need fear to have courage and bravery. Again, it's a contrast. If there's no fear there, then it wouldn't be brave. So another thing you'll notice gradually with this podcast, it's probably been there for a long while, it's just I'm starting to see it more. I've always wanted to have an experience of languages that's fun, that's engaging, that's creative here. So I bring in French as much as possible. French and English are kind of the backbone to this podcast because French has got so much meaning for me. For me, it really connected with me, my creativity. So it's a language that it doesn't make any sense business wise, or even if I translate my book, I pay more money to translate the book than I do in actual sales of the French book. But because that language helped me to unlock my creativity and it's got meaning for me, and I want to share that with other people, I want to share this understanding of how even learning a foreign language can really impact you in a profound way. That's why I do it, and that's why I find it meaningful, and that's why I'm bringing in stuff as much as possible. Like, for example, Pomme being one of the artists that I like. Another song I'm going to put in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be under the video. There's another song, Madame Monsieur, which I really like the beat to it. And what you'll find with that, I think when I was monolingual, when I didn't speak any other languages, I think I wouldn't listen to foreign songs because I had this block that I thought you had to understand the lyrics and the words to listen to the song. That was my own assumption that was wrong. And it's clearly evident that you don't. Like, my favorite song from this French artist is in Japanese. And another thing that stood out for me was that she learned Japanese with the intention of singing that song. So she went to Japan for a period of time. She loved it there. She came back to Paris and she learned some Japanese with the intention of singing this song. So that's a great example of real world learning there. That she had a specific purpose for learning Japanese. I think even in the video I was watching, I'll put a link to that video exactly. Same video. But she was saying that she didn't master the full song. She's quite a perfectionist, she was saying. She didn't master the full song, but she put in the part she'd mastered. So, like, I like that because there's messiness to it, there's realness to it. And I guess I like listening to songs in other languages because you get more at the real reason you're listening to somebody. Is that, like, the way, I think the reason I was drawn to her songs was that I felt like a soul connection to it. It felt, she had a soulful voice. It was some voice that was resonating with me right now. I suppose the other block I would have had around gradually including French into the podcast and what I do, it would be the perception of other people who are monolingual, who don't understand the language, and who could project their own stuff onto you, their own jealousies, their own insecurities, or they might even project something that, another thing that they can project is a story of who you are, of why you're doing this. So that was unnerving for me. So when I be posting stuff in French, the story that would kind of come up for me would be the fear of people who would look at me like I had notions about myself because I'm posting stuff in another language. So that was very unnerving for me. That's what something I'm working through. What I found that helps for that is to understand that you're the only one walking in your own shoes at the end of the day. You're the only one who knows why you're posting this in another language. You know what the connection is, what the meaning is. So it's that sense of grounding in yourself. I suppose, again, it ties back to that emotional intelligence. When you start working through the emotions, when you start understanding meaning, when you start understanding how you see life and making sense of your own experiences, it becomes a bit easier to just express this stuff. Because if it was just theoretical, again, it doesn't make any sense for me to be doing this theoretical, but it makes sense from the level of my experience of life and the connection with life. Because for me, connecting with my feeling, creatively expressing myself, that has been so important to my life. And so I want to portray that, and French is a language that helps me to portray that in another way. Another thing I was kind of playing with the French translation of my book, if you are a French speaker, if you're learning French, actually, I'll put a link in the show notes to the French book. You've got the French and the English book. It could be a way of learning the language a bit. Or if you're somebody who's French listening to this, the French book is out there now. You can get it. I'll put the link in the show notes. Looking for feedback on it, whether you find it good, the translation. I worked with Dina El Idriza. I hope I pronounced that right. She was the main translator. I helped her a bit with the translation after that. Went through it to make sure that it was making sense to the story that I told. I like that. I like working with someone. So with translation there, the reason I didn't translate it myself was because it's harder to translate into your target language. So in translation, you've got the source text and the source language and the target language. Source language there is in English. Target language would be French. Oh no, that's just the names of the directional translation. It's harder to translate into your foreign language. You're going to miss subtle nuances. You're going to miss certain things you just can't convey. So it was good for me to work with somebody who's a French native, and then to actually read through it then, because I can read French, read through it and make any kind of corrections or back and forth. Because what you'll also find is that I suppose the story is individual also. So I knew what I wanted to express in English. So from another person translating that, it can be quite difficult when you're not the person who's told the story. So there's collaboration there. I enjoyed that collaborative process. And artistically, we changed the color of the book to blue. Just experiment with that. The format of the size of the book is actually bigger in French. That was an accident because I thought it was that size in English, but it turned out to be it was smaller in English. But again, it's something a little bit different. And that's kind of how I do these things. I just enjoy the experimentation process. That's a lesson for foreign language learning too. What I didn't like about foreign languages, it was just so focused on getting things perfect that it really sucked the joy out of learning. That's, I think, why it's such a block around seeing learning French as a creative thing for a long time. I thought it was very academic and right or wrong, and those types of thinking would bring up this kind of feeling of I'm an imposter all the time. I didn't really enjoy speaking French when I was living like that. I started enjoying it when I was communicating, when I was talking to French people, getting to know some French people, connecting with them, understanding who they are, their culture. And that's the type of experience I want to get across in this podcast, to enjoy it, make mistakes, learn from mistakes. It's like what we're looking at here is mastery over perfection. That's what I want to help shift in you, the listener, and also just to reinforce that in myself. Because, for example, with translating the book into French, if I had in mind this needs to be perfect, there can't be any mistake in this, I'd never translate the book. It wouldn't even occur to me. I think this is what kind of happens when you have that mental block around perfection. You won't even see the obvious resources in front of you. I thought translating the French book, originally I said I was going to do it myself because I didn't want to invest thousands into translating a book. So I said I'll do it myself. I was thinking it's probably going to take me 2 years because it's not my priority right now, and I know there's probably going to be no sales from this book, so it doesn't make any sense really to prioritize this right now. But after a few months, it occurred to me that I get stuff on Fiverr every now and again. Why not give that a go? Why not look on Fiverr, see if there's translation freelancers there? So that's where I met my translator. And I think I would have been blocked from even thinking about that if I was focused on perfection. Because I would have had stories around that, oh geez, these translators on Fiverr aren't good enough and blah, 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 blah. And the book would never materialize because of that block around perfection. But because I was more experimental in the approach, I was like, I'd like to get this out this year. I saw Dina on Fiverr. I liked the profile, like communicating with her, the messages. And she had the translation done within about a month. And then I spent about two or 3 weeks going through the translation, making changes. And it was done. It was finished by the end of the year. And that's a finished, shipped product because I wasn't so focused on perfection. I was more focused on the creativity, the enjoying the process. I enjoyed reading that. So in the mornings, instead of doing my journal, what I was doing was that, actually even right now, there's an affirmation that I'm writing over and over again right now that I've switched out for now from doing the journaling process. So I was doing the affirmation and then I would translate the book. I'd translate a chapter. So I just read through it. If there's any changes to be made, I'd make some changes. And that was it. I enjoyed that process for the 2 or 3 weeks in the morning before work. I would do that. So I enjoyed that. Yeah, it was quite interesting actually reading the book in another language as well. It was quite interesting. It gives you a little bit of a different perspective. It helps you think a little bit more about it. And that's what I want to get across here. Language learning, it's a messy process. It can be a creative process. It can be a getting to know yourself process. I want to just share that because that's been my experience. I think language hacking was the thing that helped me to shift that. I just want to share that, link that with creativity. There are the main things I want to cover today. Pomme, it's the French word for apple. Pomme de terre is the French word for potato. Pomme de terre, apple of the earth. I don't know exactly why they translate it like that. I must look into that someday again. It's another one of those words that's fascinating. Translating words can be quite fascinating sometimes as well, because you're getting at the etymology of the word. Where did this word come from? I often find that with Latin words, you get closer to the origin of where the word came from, closer to the true meaning of the word. Like, for example, to educate, educare, the Latin verb, which means to draw it from within. It was to draw it from within. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because that is how I view education. I view it as there's knowledge within this person, the skill sets can be developed, but it's an internal thing. It's something that I'm asking the right questions for them to think about things themselves. That's how I would view a healthy approach to education. It's a nuanced approach, but I enjoy it. But that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Thanks again for listening, and I will speak to you on the next episode.